Hi, I'm Rose McDonough. I'm a retired home ec teacher, and I have a lot of very basic recipes so that anyone can cook. And today I'm going to show you one about making muffins. If you've ever read a muffin recipe, it will tell you about lightly incorporating the ingredients in, folding them in until the dry ingredients are just barely wet. If you do too much mixing, your muffins fall flat. If you don't do enough, sometimes they get really weird peaks on the top of them. This is a foolproof recipe. You can use it for anyone, and I have used it for children. As young as 9 years old have baked these with me. I'm starting out with bananas, and I'm the one who always likes to look for deals. Can't see the price tag on this, but I got this whole bag, and at the time that I bought it, there were 9 bananas in here for 29 cents. Great price for them. And then I sat them here on my counter and waited till they became ugly like this. So the recipe calls for 3 bananas, and you can see they're looking bad. I'm just going to go ahead and put in a 4th one, because why would I just have this sit on my counter even longer? If I didn't want to put this in here, my other option would be go ahead and throw it in a freezer bag once you have peeled it and put it in your freezer. And if I have a lot of those in there, which I do, then I will go ahead and pull them out and thaw them. Keep in mind, when you thaw them, they do have a lot more moisture in them. I try to kind of pull out a little bit of the moisture when I'm pouring them out, and then maybe know that you have to cut down a little bit on something else that you're putting in. Maybe instead of 4 tablespoons of butter, you're only going to put in 3. This is melted butter, and I use butter, I don't use margarine generally. 4 tablespoons, or the recipe calls for 1/4 of a cup. I happen to know that 1/4 of a cup is 4 tablespoons. I'm going to pour this on top of my bananas before I start to mash them, just to get the butter, which is a fat, incorporated in. Why do you need it? Because the fats will soften the gluten strands. Anytime you're using something with a flour, you're going to have gluten strands in there. This is a potato masher. If you don't have a potato masher and you quickly want to put in a regular mixer, hand mixer, or if you want to use your KitchenAid mixer, you surely can do this. But again, if I'm doing this recipe with a child, we're taking our time, because we're trying to teach them some things as they're going along, and they enjoy being in the kitchen. I don't know any child that doesn't enjoy being in the kitchen helping you to prepare. I know a little guy who's just almost 2 years old, and when his mom starts cooking dinner, he brings his stool over to cook with her. I help. He wants to do that. Why would a child not want to? So start with them early. Don't be afraid. If you don't want them to use the oven, I certainly understand that. You don't want them to use the range, I certainly understand that. But there's no reason why kids can't do some food prepping, why they can't chop up some fruits, why they can't chop up some vegetables. Not a carrot, carrot's hard. Cucumber, soft. Get them in the idea. Teach them hand over hand how to do that. Okay, I've mashed up my bananas. They're nicely mashed up. And the next thing I need to add is 2 eggs. So when I add eggs, I'm going to do mine over a container. You don't have to if you feel really brave. I'm 60. I've been doing cooking probably since I was about 12 years old. One time in my entire life did I have an egg that had blood in it. That's it. But I had 8 eggs going in to my batter that I was making. And I went to hit it, and I saw the blood, and I stopped and I dropped it so that it didn't go in. I don't like to challenge myself anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and just crack the egg. I can't do it with one hand. If you can, great for you. If I could, would showcase that skill, but I don't have it. So I'm just going to use my 2 thumbs, put my thumbs in, pull it back away from me, and drop the eggs down in. Eggs have salmonella, can be, so usually when I'm done with cooking with eggs, I make sure I use a Clorox wipe to wipe out my countertop. I'm breaking up the eggs, the yolks just a little bit, mixing it, not anything great, and I'm going to pour that in here. Put this aside, use my rubber scraper, because why would I use anything else? You know, I do have other things. I have wooden spoons, I have large spoons, I have plastic stuff. I have all kinds of things, but I just generally tend to grab the rubber scraper because I find it to be the best tool out there. All right, after this, I've done the 2 eggs, I've done my bananas, I've done my melted margarine. Now I need cake mix. Cake mix? The reason we're using cake mix is because it already has everything else in it that is necessary when you're baking. It has the baking soda, the baking powder in it, it has the salt in it, it has some sugar in it, it has everything else that you need. But with using a cake mix and using this, it does not matter how long a child stirs it. They can stir for 4 minutes until they're bored with it. It does not matter. It's not going to affect these muffins, which is one of the reasons why I like it so much. And believe me, everyone in my family likes these muffins too. We make the banana muffins. Sometimes I'll add fruit to it. If I add fruit, I change and I add a little bit of other things to the recipe, because the bananas, if you know, there are times that you can substitute bananas and you can substitute applesauce for different quantities of liquids that are added in. You see, I didn't add anything else to this. I didn't add any milk to it. Of course, we didn't add any water to it. All of the moisture that is going to need to make these rise is going to come from those bananas and the little bit of eggs and the butter. The butter, as I said, is coating the gluten strands to make them tender. So it's sort of mixed up. It's not mixed up enough. I'm adding chocolate chips because who doesn't want chocolate chips? My recipe calls for 6 ounces and I have a brand new bag. Wow, 6 ounces. 6 ounces is, how much of a cup? Well, I happen to know it's about 3/4 of a cup. I'm just going to put my hand in here. Oh yeah, it feels like that's about half. That's good enough for me. I'm using my kitchen shears. I always have kitchen shears. I don't know if you're looking around my kitchen, if you're watching anything, but they hang right there beside my kitchen sink because I use them so frequently. And I'll twist this off and close them up later and they'll be ready for my next time that I'm baking. I like the mini chocolate chips. Obviously, you use whatever you have in your house or whatever you like the flavor of. But this is something that I really like to have them. I feel like you get more chocolate chip per bite because of them being so much smaller. All right, I'm going to mix this up. I have some bananas that aren't completely mixed up. It doesn't matter. They're a banana muffin anyway, so what's the difference? If you chose not to have chocolate chips in here, you surely can put in some walnuts in here. That would be wonderful as well. Maybe you don't want to add anything. Maybe you're happier just with the bananas. Maybe when you're finished with these, you're going to take a little bit of melted butter, brush the tops of them, and sprinkle some cinnamon sugar on top of them. Whatever you do with these, make them fun. Baking should be fun. Baking should be relaxing. I find that when you're making muffins, if you have to be too perfect with them, it's not nearly as fun. My oven is preheated to 375 degrees, and unfortunately, I'm not ready to go yet. Just a little bit more mixing, I think, looks good. I don't see any of the white cake mix left in here, so I think I'm all right. Again, I'm using my technique of holding the bowl, lifting the bowl up, and using the rubber scraper to scrape off anything from the bottom to make sure it's good. Surely not going to keep you here watching me fill 20 to 24 muffins. I don't know how many I'm going to have. I have 4 baking pans with 6 papers in them. We'll see how many I use. I use this measure scoop. It's a little bit over 1/4 of a cup. The 1/4 is down a little bit lower. It happens to be the one that I choose to use. So when I'm doing this, I just pour in. You can use something else if you want. If you've been at some point in your life at a Pampered Chef party, you may have some of these things. If you do, you can use these as well. 1 scoop, and this is great for kids. 2 scoops, red fish, blue fish. Oh no, sorry, that doesn't rhyme. You can use those whichever you want to fill up. Try to make them all about the same size. I also, when I'm putting in the oven, try to make sure that all 4 are on the same rack in the middle of the oven. If you need to put 2 on one, 2 on the other, make sure you stagger them so that the heat can circulate through. And when they are finished, I will show you. I'll be using a cake tester. And I was thinking this morning, we never had one of these growing up. My mom didn't actually cook or bake very often. But when we were growing up and we needed to check things, she would go over to the broom and pull a piece off of the broom and go to the side that was connected in up at the top, and that's what she would poke in to make sure that it was done. And I was thinking about that this morning, thinking, I'm 60, I survived all the craziness that went on. And get this one, I rode in the back of a truck without a seatbelt too. All right, I'll get these done, I'll get them in the oven, and we'll see them in a few minutes. My timer has just gone off, and I'm going to go ahead and check them. I had them a little bit heavier than I usually do, or more full, because of putting in that fourth banana. So instead of going at 20 to 24 minutes as trying to guess, I just went ahead with the 24 because I've been doing this long enough. I knew it was going to need a little bit of extra. I'm going to take my cake tester and I'm going to put it right through the middle. When you pull that out, what you want to make sure is that there's nothing stuck on it. There's no moist batter, so it means that they're ready to go. So I'm going to pull all these out, and after I get these out of the oven, I want to show you what you need to do it the next time. And of course, at this point, I need to turn my oven off. These are nicely shaped at the top. They're not a high shape, and it's a really weird thing to explain, but some of them, if they've been over mixed, will come up. These are just over. This is nice. They'll cool, and they'll be delicious. Once I pull them out of the oven, the thing that I do is I always turn my muffins on their side. One time I had somebody here replacing a door in my house. His wife called me a couple of days later and said, so my husband wants to know, but was afraid to ask you, why do you turn your muffins on the side when you take them out of the oven? And can I have the recipe of what you made, because he said they were delicious. The reason I do this, and I do this with bread as well, is you want to let the steam escape out of the bottom. So you want the heat to go out. Otherwise, sometimes on the bottom you'll see a little bit of moisture on there. That's what happens, they'll start getting soggy on the bottom. We don't want them to be soggy. So I just turn them up and lay them down here. When I put them in a container for everyone to eat from, I just use an old Tupperware container that was a cake taker. So one side is the lid, the other side is the deep dish bottom of it, or however you want to look at it. I store them on their side in there as well, just so that they will stay not moist. And I don't put the lid on right away either. Make sure they're completely cool before you put the lid on top of them. Okay, that's it. A cake mix, some old ugly bananas, a little bit of butter, a couple of eggs, some chocolate chip, and I just got 2 dozen muffins that are probably going to be gone in about 3 days in my house. This is why we're all pleasantly plump here, you know. Thanks. Hope you come in again and join us for another episode. Have a good day.